In this case study, we are looking at a situation where a principal, Mr. Stevens, has got good checks and balances in place to make sure that things are money is collected correctly and things are done well in his sporting events. He has a parent and a student who has earned the right to go and share her talents as a cheerleader at a competition away from the school, and the mother has requested help with funding. Mr. Stevens understandably denied this request for funding, as the $798 the mother is asking for is only going to be benefiting one child and not the entire student body, and he chose to not give that money to the mother. And then the next opportunity that she had, there's some evidence that pointed out that possibly that mother may have taken $50 from the school and covered it up. The first thing we have to look at in this scenario is what we know and what we need to know. We know here that Mrs. Bowman has had the opportunity to steal these funds from the school, and we have a report from Mr. Dumas that he paid the $50 bill, and then at the end of the night, Mr. Stevens and the security guard did not find any $50 bill in the bank bag. Mrs. Bowman also reported that there was some torn tickets, and those torn tickets that she had to discard equaled exactly $50, which may be a coincidence, but likely is not. I think we need to really figure out and make sure that her explanation is legitimate, and we need to know that. We need to know who it is that collected that $50 bill from Mr. Dumas. I think we can find that information by talking to Mr. Dumas himself about who he paid the money to. Another thing that we probably need to find out is from the other ticket takers, other people who are collecting money, is did someone else happen to replace that $50 bill with a smaller bill? And ask Mrs. Bowman what happened to those torn tickets and see where those ended up at. After we have that information, it's time for us to move on and come up with a plan of action. I think that's really your plan of action is going to involve doing some of that legwork and checking out things. First you confirm with Mr. Dumas about the $50. Make sure it came in. Make sure who it went to, and those sort of things. Make sure he wasn't just telling a story that night. The next thing is talking to those other ticket sellers, and checking if you in fact collect tickets at the door. You buy a ticket and then you leave a torn ticket or whatnot, in a hamper. I definitely think going through that hamper and looking to see if those tickets that Mrs. Bowman said were destroyed, are those there? If you can find one of those in your ticket hamper, then absolutely I would want to know that information. The next thing, resolution of the problem. It's difficult really to find absolute proof in this situation, and in the form of this case study, it's difficult to know exactly what those next steps should be, what those resolutions are. But if the evidence is pointing, if we find out that the $50 did in fact come in, that she had the $50 in her possession, and no one else stepped in there and replaced that $50 bill with a couple 20s and a 10, or for whatever reason, then I think you absolutely have to talk to her about it. If there's solid evidence in place, you have to go to her and say, hey, this is what I know. I know that Mr. Dumas paid her the $50 bill. I know that you told me that these tickets are torn. I want to know where those tickets are. I need help. Ask for some assistance in that regard. Where did those tickets go, and approach it in a way where you're asking for her assistance to explain what's happened. Because according to everything, yes, we have the money we're supposed to have. We've done everything that we're supposed to do. But I know that this $50 bill came in from Mr. Dumas, and I want to know where that went to. Okay. Um, and next we have to debrief the problem, and the debriefing of the problem. Really, I think what is to gain by pursuing Mrs. Bowman? There are a lot of pieces in this situation. They're not concrete enough for what I like. I don't want to go off at her kind of just halfway, and not have all my ducks in a row to come to a parent and make an accusation. I want to make sure that I have everything lined out and know exactly what's going on. But so before I even consider talking to Mrs. Bowman in this situation, I want to know all the things that we've talked about already, about the $50 bill not replaced, and making sure that she had the opportunity to touch it, and had the opportunity to take that $50 bill. And then I go and talk to her, and I make sure that she understands that what I'm seeing here is not acceptable. I don't want to make a huge public display of it. I want to keep it low key, because I don't see where really making a huge splash publicly and lambasting this woman for what she's done. I don't think that is the way to go. I want to talk to her, debrief her on what I see as a situation, ask her what steps we need to go moving forward, and let her know that I know that she is likely taking this money, and give her every opportunity to replace that money, and attempt to avoid a much messier situation. Next, I think the school leadership opportunities that we have here, in order to promote efficient and effective and efficient management of the school district funds. I think Mr. Stevens has done a good job in this situation of having the right checks in place to see if there is an impropriety. Where did that go to? Who collected that bill? All those things I think can be figured out in this situation. Where you and just continuing that, and if with Mrs. Bowman, what's more, we have to make sure that she's not ever put in a situation where she can do something like this again. We have to make sure that she's does not ever have the opportunity to handle school funds, and take that opportunity away from her. But and I think that is really the next big step you've got to take to improve the efficiency. Next, as a school leader, how do I promote effective and efficient management of the district? Make sure everything is substantiated. Make sure we have that information and removal of her in the future. Next, how am I promoting the social learning of every student? I think making sure that we move wisely, and don't not putting yourself in a situation where you can be egregiously wrong, and you're not going to be making a statement that you cannot back up. You can't make an accusation that's just unfounded. You make sure you handle. And I also think you got to handle it discreetly. And again, make sure that Mrs. Bowman is no longer a volunteer to take funds at any games or any other events. Finally, how does it promote academic learning? I think sticking to your position on the idea that funding Mrs. Bowman's daughter's trip to this cheerleading festival is not a priority for the school, because it's only benefiting one student, and also making sure that the booster club allow opportunities. We're having students who have opportunities within the booster club to problem solve and see real world situations, but also avoiding a large scale investigation and trying to just patch this situation up between Mr. Stevens and Mrs. Bowman is the best way to go, because otherwise you're going to have a huge ordeal in which it's going to disrupt learning. It's going to be tried. If it's tried through public opinion, the school can also end up looking bad for not helping this young girl go to the cheerleading competition, because you want to not showing ways to support one of their own. There's lots of ways that if this goes into the trial of public opinion, they could really go bad for the school. So you want to make sure you handle it as discreetly as possible, and talk to Mrs. Bowman and give her every opportunity to fess up and to return that $50. Really, in closing, that's the big thing for me. Is I think that we have to make sure that we handle it firmly, but discreetly, and when we talk to Mrs. Bowman about the situation. Thank you, and this is Sean Ryan from Junction City, Kansas. Good night.